everyone. If you want to be more involved in the show, please make sure to follow our account on Instagram at Therapists Out of Office.
We will regularly ask questions that we will answer and dive into in our sessions on screen.
We want to make this collaborative between us and you.
Thank you for being here and enjoy the show. Welcome to Therapists Out of Office. I'm Leeor.
I'm Maggie Leeor, and we're both licensed therapists in private practice.
Each episode, we will discuss mental health topics that are both mainstream and taboo, from both the lens of a therapist and a human being.
We show up with humor, authenticity, and vulnerability as we get into the educational nitty-gritty.
So come on in, make yourself cozy, and welcome to your session.
Outside of the office. Yo, Leeor!
Hey, Max. How you feeling today?
Doing good, doing great. Welcome to session 1.
Ooh, session 1. I love the sound of that.
I know, me too. Instead of episode, it's session. Get it? Because we're therapists.
Yeah, we're therapists, obviously. Outside of the office, though.
Outside of the office, for sure. Mm-hmm. So I think what we should maybe start by doing for this very first session is a little bit of an introductory, like how we met.
Yeah. I'm wondering, do you want to tell this story, or should I share my version of it?
Yeah, your version, I feel like, makes me feel like I am a little creepy. So my version is I just newly started my social media. Mm-hmm. I had a smaller presence, and I was just looking around and trying to find people in like a like-minded space, other therapists on social media. I saw your account on Instagram. I saw that you said Philly-based, and I was like, oh my God, I'm like 10, 15 minutes over the bridge. Let me reach out and just see if this person would want to be friends. Mm-hmm. And then I guess you can pick it up from there, how you interpreted that.
I did interpret it that way. I think that as social media therapists, we're always just scared to respond to DMs because we don't want to cross any boundaries or any lines or give any advice to people. And so, of course, I'm always hesitant when I'm responding to DMs. But as soon as I saw that you were a therapist in the area, I was like, you know what? I could use a new friend. and I could use somebody to talk to about this life. And when I responded, you were so nice and so warm and welcoming. And I immediately fell in love with your energy, which I cannot express enough how much I appreciate it now. So I'm glad that I caught on to that. But yeah, I remember you asked me to get coffee, and we did. I mean, I said yes, and...
Well, we didn't get coffee. We got sushi.
Yeah, it's true. We did get sushi. Yeah. Way better than coffee.
Way better than coffee.
Yeah. And I will say Maggie knew how to keep me because she paid for our dinner. Or for our lunch. I think it was lunch, actually.
I think it was lunch.
Yeah, she paid for lunch, and I was like, wow, she knows how to treat someone right.
It was a date. I mean, I asked you on the date, so it's only right that I pay, I guess.
Yes.
And I knew eventually you would say, you know what, let me repay her and take her to dinner again or lunch again.
It's so true because I couldn't handle the fact that you did that, and I was so excited to repay the favor.
I know. You had a thing about that, but I think that, I just wanted to be kind and nice. And I was the one that asked you again. So.
Yeah, and you were kind. I also think that there's a level of fear of being judged when you're meeting somebody new, whether that's obviously through social media, which is so crazy to think about.
Yeah.
But also just in general, making new friends and having that just like anxious but also giddy energy around us was magical.
It's like Disney World.
It was Disney World for me.
Yeah.
No, but I think, you sort of, it's kind of hard to be yourself right off the bat.
Yeah.
But when you meet somebody that just asks you the right questions or listens to you, validates you, it's so much easier to open up and be open and honest and raw with someone.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I think meeting someone for the first time, like off of social media, but it's kind of like online dating, Like, you know what they look like you've maybe seen videos of them or pictures of them, but like you don't know how they're going to react or respond in person, and like body language is a big thing, and like can you keep a flow of a conversation. There's a lot of like fear there, and I also think just both being therapists puts like another level of anxiety to it. I think, like, I don't know about you, but whenever I meet other therapists, I'm always like, do they want to, like, are they judging me as a human being, or are they judging me as like a friend or as a therapist? Like, oh my God, I can't believe Maggie talks like that or speaks like that. Like, that's not the kind of therapist that I would want. Versus like me in my personal private life, obviously, like, I mean, I think it's pretty congruent. Like, my values and morals and all that stuff is pretty solid. But I think, you know, in my personal life, I am a little bit more silly or giddy or, you know, ridiculous than I am in my like professional life. So like meeting a therapist, it's like, are you thinking that this is the way that I am in a session?
That's a good point. Yeah. And I think too, when you're meeting other therapists outside of, you know, clinical work, what do you talk about? Yeah. Is it okay to talk about myself? Is it okay to open up? Is it okay to share things that I normally wouldn't share, you know, with my boss or maybe some employees? And so I think the fact that when we got together, we were able to open up and just understand each other, as cliche as it sounds, on a different level.
Yeah, for sure.
That's how you know.
Yeah.
But you're so right. Having that like fear of judgment and what are they going to take away from this session? No. From this hangout.
Right. Because it's also just like, you know, I think the other thing that we did stumble upon just in like the first couple of times that we met was like, when you say you're like opening up to me about something, you're like, oh, I'm struggling with this client or whatever, and we are talking clinically, it's like, do I give you advice from like a clinical standpoint or like from a friendship standpoint? Like, what hat am I wearing, like when we're chatting and talking? Or like, if I don't say something that's super clinical, are you thinking like, oh man, like, I don't know if I like that. Like, I don't know. Like, it is a little bit tricky to like not, you don't want to be in that hat with your friends, but you're both therapists, so it's like almost natural to go into that hat, like to go into that role.
Yeah, no, you're so right. I wonder too, you know, something that I usually do with my friends now that are therapists, I preface it with, hey, you know, I need friend advice rather than therapist advice. And therapist advice doesn't really exist because therapists don't give advice.
Yes. Disclaimer.
Yeah. But sort of the idea of, you know, am I asking for your personal opinion on a matter, or am I asking you to help me come to a decision on my own? Yeah. That's sort of like the difference between the two. And what I've learned is I kind of just have to start the conversation in that way. And so there isn't any confusion.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it also is different between if you're two therapists that are friends versus if I am the therapist and I'm talking to one of my friends who is not. And I think that gets a little trickier because I think at least for the most part, between two therapists, you're aware of like, I don't want you to fall into that hat. Like, I don't want you to talk to me that way. I want you to be able to have a conversation with me, like friend to friend, you know, personal to personal, rather than like colleague, you know, clinician. But I think with friends who are not clinicians or therapists, it's a little trickier because I think a lot of times it's hard to set that boundary of like, I don't really want to do this work right now. And then you're like, am I a jerk for not wanting to do that? Like, to not wanting to put that hat on with you? I just want to be able to BS around and have fun and be silly. But you're looking to me for support and therapeutic advice, and putting that boundary, I think, is sometimes hard. But it's appropriate, I think, for us.
Oh, it's so appropriate. What's not appropriate is actually being a therapist to the people in your life.
Right.
The close people in your life. And, you know, in the ethics handbook, we're not allowed to be therapists to our partners, our friends, our family members, because it isn't, we wouldn't be coming from an objective perspective. So when a friend reaches out and they're like, you know, this and that, and let's say in the scenario they're not a therapist, like you said, you know, we know them too well, and we know the other people involved.
Like, what do you mean? I know your mom's crazy. What are you talking about?
Right. Like, we wouldn't say that to a client.
Right.
But yes, setting up that boundary, and also, you know, we do this all day, every day. We're always wearing our therapist hat when we're at work. And so outside of work, we just want to be silly.
Yeah.
We want to have fun, not be serious. And I think also, a super side note to that, we both show that on our social media as well, that we don't take things too seriously because we know what that would do to us.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. I think it's super pivotal to be able to separate, have that separation between clinician and, I know it's corny and cliche, but we say it, human. Be like, to separate clinician and human, and clinician and friend and sister and, wife and all the other things, mom, that we are in our personal lives. Because, I don't know, I think wearing that clinical hat would kind of like, almost like be really hard to maintain just like authenticity and genuineness, and for us to be able to just, like get things off of our chest, because we have that stuff too.
Yeah, we have stake in the game when it's the people in our lives.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? Like if I have a friend that, I don't know, chooses to move to California or Philadelphia, I'm going to be like, yeah, you should probably move to Philadelphia. You shouldn't move. Yeah, why do you want to move to California? But if I was your therapist, I wouldn't have stake in the game. Right. I'd be like, well, I can't work with you if you're in California because I'm not licensed there. But I would be like, well, tell me, tell me what you're thinking about the two. What are the pros and cons?
Right. Exactly. I think our work clinically is to help the client grow, right? Like that's our work clinically, is to help them to navigate their own thoughts and feelings around things versus what are my thoughts and feelings around things. That's what the work is that we do with our friends. Like we can talk about our own kind of thoughts, feelings, perspectives without feeling like we're shoving that at them. That's not the work as a therapist, is to do that. Our work is to help the clients do that. Exactly. But with friendships, you want to be able to be like, I don't like this, or I like that, or, that kind of thing.
This actually reminds me of when you were at my house a few weeks ago and you were talking about something, and I noticed myself just filling you up with open-ended questions. And it was so weird because I was like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Because sometimes we naturally fall into that. Even though Maggie and I are now talking about how it's like, we need to set boundaries and we can't be like that to our friends and family. We naturally oftentimes fall into that. And sometimes, our friends and family and whatever can call us out. But sometimes we have to call ourselves out. And in that moment, I was like, holy crap. Take it down a bit. And you were just laughing. You're like, oh my gosh, it's not even, I didn't even bat an eye to that.
Yeah, and that's what I mean when I say that being a therapist is so congruent, I think, with who we are in our personal lives, which is why it is, I think, so hard for us to, in particular, to set that boundary and recognize when we're doing what role we're slipping into. Because I think naturally you want to you want to help, right? Like naturally your inclination is like, how can I help Maggie to explore this? Like, how can I help Maggie to feel heard and seen and validated? Yeah. And that's what a therapist does. And also that's who you are as a person. Yeah. So it's hard to, differentiate that when they're so congruent, between our identities, therapist and person.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think it's totally appropriate to call each other out. I mean, I was able to call myself out, but it would have been okay if Maggie did so as well. So when we get into arguments with each other, and I mean that as not necessarily me and Maggie. Hopefully that doesn't happen very often.
It's going to happen. It's part of a natural, normal, healthy relationship.
I know. I do want to rip her hair out sometimes, but not the full head of hair. There's a lot of hair on that head.
Take some of it. Please take some of it. I will pay you.
I'll gladly take it, honestly.
Rip it out.
But when we think about getting into arguments with our friends or with other therapists, I almost laugh at like my evolution of, being pre-therapist to being post-therapist and how I handle situations, and how sometimes it's like really, really great and I'm so communicative and I know exactly what to say. And sometimes there's that react versus response and I'm just immediately feeling like I'm guns blazing.
Yeah.
Even when it's my therapist friends or my other friends. And so I think navigating between, okay, I have the tools.
Yeah.
I know what to do, but I can't do it in this moment.
Yeah, I mean, again, like that's, I think, part of, that is the standard that I think so many therapists hold themselves to, that a lot of other professions don't necessarily have that pressure, right? Like to always know how to react and respond so perfectly to every situation emotionally.
Yeah.
As if like we're not going to experience anger or fear or anxiety or sadness. We very much experience those things, and we're just held to the, or I guess there's a misconception that we know what to do with those emotions all the time, or we know how to not escalate, or we know how to regulate those. And, you know, not always, right? It's just, it's the truth. It's human experience is not always. You're not always going to be able to, you know, manage that when something is really heavy and hard. And I think for therapists, it is a really hard thing to do and a really hard thing to accept in terms of like, just like our clients, we can't always use the skills. We're not always able to do that.
Yeah. And that point that you just made, you know, it can be really damaging to be defined by your occupation.
Ugh. Yes.
Right? It's sort of like, and we can take the example of physicians. Like, oh, physicians, they probably like take care of their health and they do this and they do that. And if they don't, they're probably too burnt out to do so because they're taking care of everybody else.
Sure.
And I think the same stands for us. Is it's hard to be only viewed as a therapist rather than just a human being that is fallible and has experiences that are not going to be so perfect and great.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think that is really hard because I have had experiences where things happen in the world, right? Like if we just look at the last couple of years, which has been a poop show. So there have been experiences in the last couple of years where I have friends or family reaching out to me and saying like, Maggie, like, you know, you're the therapist. Like, why do you think that this person thinks that way? Or why do you think that they're doing these things? Or psychologically speaking, like, why do you think, you know, this person tweeted that or whatever? And so it's hard because I think that is the truth, is that people kind of look at us and say like, oh, they're the therapist. They just have all the answers to human behavior.
Oh,
they know why everybody does, you know, what they do. And I'm like, no, a lot of this is, you know, I don't know. I'm just as befuddled by all of it as you are. And I don't have all of the answers to everybody's behavior or why they do what they do all the time.
And behavior is so complex and there are so many layers to it.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Just because somebody reacts some way one time does not mean that they're now labeled as X diagnosis or, you know, this and that. So I think that you sharing that is so relevant and so relatable, because how then do we combat that? You know, what do we say? No, I have my bad days, and then what? I know. No, I know. It's a tough thing, and I've had to always say, you know, I don't know, they're not my client. That's usually what I do. I don't know, they're not my client. Because like you said, there's so much to, I mean, as you all know, like we are all such complex human beings. Like we have so many experiences in life, and we can't just be defined by the few that maybe are most looked at. And that I think is something that's really important, that we look at these behaviors that are maybe highlighted, or we look at the things on social media and we go, why does X, Y, and Z happen? But people are so multifaceted, like we all are. I mean, if you're 25 years old, you have 25 years of experience, right? Yeah. And that's a long time. If you worked somewhere for 25 years, that would be really, really significant. You would be a very seasoned member of the team at that point. And so, you know, if we work with clients that are in their 20s, their 30s, their 40s, and they're saying like, wow, you know, I just want to change this behavior, as if it's like, bang, you know, really easy to do. I say, well, you got this behavior of 25 years of learning it, you know, learning to be this way, or this is the safe way to be, or this is how I've been, you know, how I've learned to react or respond because it feels safe, or it feels like the only way to protect myself, or whatever it is. And so I think, you know, it's really hard because there is so much to all of us, more than just, you know, our profession.
Yeah, our profession, our experiences. we're also multi-layered and multifaceted.
Absolutely. And, when you said the word safe,
Mm-hmm.
I was almost, you almost took me away. And look, I have ADHD. That's not that hard. But
where'd you go?
Yeah, I was not there with you the rest of that. No, but I was really thinking about the idea of safety. And yeah, when people come to us, it's because they think that we have all the answers, or they think we know what we're talking about all the time. And sure, sometimes we do, and sometimes we absolutely do not. And especially, like you said, if it's somebody that's not our client.
Right.
But that idea of safety, and maybe that's more of what being a therapist represents, is that we are a safe space for people, but that doesn't mean that we are everything for everybody.
Right.
All of us, all the time.
Right.
And there's that idea of, I know we're not doing clinical jargon here, but the idea of compassion fatigue. And basically what that means is we are fatigued with all the compassion that we are continuously, experiencing throughout our day as therapists, as being in clinical work.
Mm-hmm. And I do think that that's why sometimes it's hard to give it to ourselves, because we really do focus on making sure that everyone else gets that from us who needs it.
Yeah.
And I think it is, there are some days, I'm sure anybody who works in like the helping field can relate, is you just get home and you just want to not.
Yeah.
Like not in every sense of the word.
Yeah.
Like not do anything. I don't even want to watch TV. I don't want to go on social media. I don't want to talk to my husband or my wife or my partner or my kids. And I just want to not. I just want to veg out and I don't even know, read a book or whatever, just lay in my bed. And so, yeah, I think that the compassion fatigue is very, very real.
What is your vice?
As in something that
you like to do. Okay, I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
Mine is I love reality TV.
I don't.
I know you don't. You don't like to talk to me about it. But I will watch all of it. Bachelor, Bravo,
yeah.
Love is Blind. I love it all, and that's my just turn my brain off and watch it and be entertained.
I guess then it would be books, like fiction, romance novels maybe.
Ooh.
I have not read a lot of romance in my life, but I started to, with the Colleen Hoover train.
Oh, yes.
Everybody started reading her books.
That.
I think it was over the pandemic. I think she started to kind of blow up more. And I started reading all her books and I was like, oh, this is such a great escape.
Yeah.
It's just a great escape. So I guess maybe that. I did watch the 2 seasons of Love is Blind.
Ooh.
So we could talk about those things. But I don't watch any of the other things. All the other shows that you mentioned.
Well, you do exercise. I know you do
exercise.
You do exercise.
But when I think of Vice, I think of something that's a little cringy.
Yeah, right? A little bad for you, but also kind of good.
Right. So I don't know. I guess it would just be reading romance novels. It doesn't necessarily educate me in any way but it's just fun, I guess.
It is fun. And I also read, what was it? Before we met, it ends with us. No, it ends. I think
it ends with us. It starts with us. I think is coming out or just came out.
There's 2 of them, but I did
yes.
read It Ends With Us,
yes.
and it's so funny that you bring this up because as I was reading it, I noticed myself reading it from a lens of a therapist, and I'm like,
no,
this is toxic. This is not good. I know. So it's funny that you mentioned that because when I do that, when I read books like that, I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. Do I do that with books? I think no. I don't think I do. Maybe that's why I like books.
Good for you.
Because I do read them and I just enjoy them.
Yeah.
But I do want to ask, does this happen to you? And maybe you guys can let me know if it happens to you too. But I read a ton of books and I read relatively quickly. Ooh. And I jump from one book to the next book to the next book. And I love that. I love always having something to read. But what happens to me is once I'm done one book and I go into the next book and I finish that book, I literally forget the book I just read before that.
Really?
Yeah. I struggle at the recall of the books that I read. And I don't know if it's because I read them so quickly, so back to back to back to back.
Yeah.
But even in the books that I read in the last couple of weeks, I could only tell you about the book that I just read.
Well, the fact that you just said books
yeah.
that I read in the last couple of weeks kind of says it all because it'll take me months to read a book.
No. I think I've probably read at least in the last I don't know, 3 weeks. I would probably read a book a week, maybe a little more.
Oh my gosh. Are you one of those people that like with their New Year's resolution, you say like, I need 12 books this year or something?
I tried to be that person, but then I didn't like the pressure because I was like, why am I putting goals? Like, why am I making this into something that has to be productive or substantial?
Yeah.
So I just was like, I'm just going to read when I want to read, what feels fun.
Maybe you need the opposite. Maybe you need like, I can only read this amount of books.
Maybe you're right. I think I'm at like, I don't know, like maybe close to 50 books for this year.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, maybe in the 40s.
I can't even imagine.
I'd have to look at my Goodreads.
Is that an app?
Yes.
Okay, I only recently started reading in the past
Welcome
few
to the
months.
club.
Oh, thank you. Yes, and I've been enjoying it. I never thought that I would enjoy reading books because I never found books that fit my style. And as you know, in grad school, we read so much.
Oh, for sure.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's almost
Don't
like...
get me wrong. I did not read a lot in grad. When I was in formal education, I was not reading for pleasure.
Yeah, it was so hard. And you're just reading educational stuff all the time and research-based stuff that like, by the time that ended, I was like, I don't think I like reading. I don't want to do that until I started reading fiction. And I was like, oh my gosh, like in the romance stuff is cool.
Yes. And so that kind of also lets us know as human beings, as therapists, that not everything we do has to have like this big overarching like purpose or goal or be productive or anything like that. We can sometimes just do things for fun.
Yes.
For pleasure, for joy.
Oh, yeah.
Because we want to.
Yeah, I agree. I think that especially, we're both licensed. We're both, we've been in this field for a little while now. But starting out, I remember wanting to read all the books about everything.
Oh, yes.
And all the YouTube videos of famous psychologists and therapists in the field, and just like telling me how to do my job. And I would like Google how to be a couples therapist when I literally had a degree in marriage and family therapy. That it's so funny how much pressure we put on ourselves.
Yeah. I could go real deep into that because I am that clinician that has probably a bookshelf and a half of workbooks, like self-help books, who knows, like however many novels or what psychologist or psychiatrist wrote this book with all the best intentions to read them and to bookmark them and to highlight them and to, I'm going to use this in a session. And sometimes I did and do, but I also think that lends to like, there is no such thing as one therapist for every client. Ooh. There is no such thing. Yes. And I think that's really important because I'm not going to fit for everyone, and that's okay. I don't have to be the therapist for everybody. Yeah. Because I can't remember how the quote goes, but it's something like, if you're for everybody, then you're really for nobody.
I love that.
And I think that's really important, that we have to recognize that we have the clientele that is best suited for us and that we are best suited for them, and that team is going to kick butt, right? And that we don't have to, if we're not fitting or meshing with the client, if we can't give them what they need, or we're not what they're not what we need, or they're not whatever, if we're not meshing in that way, then that's okay. That we can refer, we can make sure they get paired with someone who does, and we don't have to be the therapist for every single person, every client.
What you're explaining right now sort of makes me think of that other quote of jack of all trades and a master of none.
Oh, yes. Yeah, right? I like it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That you're right. We can't possibly be trained in everything, certified in everything, understand everything, work with every single diagnosis. That is why there are specialties. That is why, there are people out there that are going to be a better fit for you. And also, like you said, some people need different energies from their therapist.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know, I can't speak for you, but I'm pretty energetic.
Yeah. No, not at all.
Yeah. I'm going to take a crazy run. No, I'm kidding. I actually don't run. Oh, God. So all my energy is just stored for my clients and my friends.
To go.
And my partner. I know, yeah. Everyone's like, Leeor, stop talking to me. I'm like, please, I got to get it out. But yeah, I think that's a really good point.
Yeah, right. We're not machines. We're not going to always know what to say and what to do. We're not going to be certified in everything. We do the best that we can with the information we have and the things that we specialize in or the things that we'll learn more about. And I think that is okay.
Yeah, and besides the point, it's so hard. It takes so long and a lot of money to be certified in things as therapists.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Like I mean, I just did an EMDR training about oh my gosh, now it's almost a year ago.
Yeah.
So weird. And that was extensive.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
And it is now years until I can get actually certified in it. So after doing that and understanding that, hey, Leeor, you cannot do everything.
Yeah.
I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Exactly. I know. Well, guess what?
What?
We're almost at time. We're close.
How do you, as we're ending this, how do you end your sessions?
I think I've been fairly lucky in my career of things kind of just have always had a natural end, I feel like. I have had some clients where I have to say, we have to let's table this. I don't want to leave the wound open and then just send you out the door. That kind of thing, that kind of mentality. Because you don't want to do that. I mean, I truly don't want to do that, right? Is start talking about something and then the doorknob confession, right? You don't want to start talking about something and then have them leave, and it's a big open sore, right? A big open wound. So typically I just say things I don't want to do that to you. I think we might want to table this, couch this, put a pin in it, kind of thing, and we'll get back to it next week. But I think I've been fairly lucky in that regard.
Well, yeah, because I mean, it's definitely hard because when we're getting into it, we're not looking at the clock all the time.
No.
I'm not looking at the clock right now, so
right. Right. Which is why I'm trying to feel has it been around about the time that we should?
Yeah, you're right. There's a feeling that we get too. I love that ending. So let's put a pin in it.
I'll see you next week.
I'll see you next week
for session 2.
See you then.
Bye.
If you'd like to be a part of our community, ask us questions, be involved, laugh your tuchus off, and enjoy some hand-drawn art, don't hesitate to follow us on our socials, both Instagram and TikTok, at The Therapy Gal for me, Leeor.
And at Therapy with Maggie LPC for me, Maggie. And our shared Instagram at Therapists Out of Office. Write a review, follow, subscribe, check us out on YouTube if you want to watch, listen to our podcast on most major platforms. We cannot extend our gratitude enough. Thank you all for being here and for being a part of this. We love you.